Everyone who bakes has a different idea of what constitutes a great pie crust, and there are many ways to make pie crust. Usually the difference is the fat. The type of fat you use will determine the flavor and the texture of your pie crust. We tried it here. We have 3 crusts made with lard, shortening, and butter, and we're going to go through the pros and cons of each. Let's start with lard. Lard is rendered and refined pork fat. It's 100% fat. It will give you a very tender, flaky pie crust, but the flavor is pretty neutral and bland. Pie crust made with lard can be a little difficult to work with because the dough is so delicate and fragile. Next up is shortening. Shortening is a solid fat made from vegetable oils like palm, cottonseed, or soybean. The vegetable oils are hydrogenated, so they stay solid at room temperature. And shortening is going to give you a very flaky, tender crust. The flavor is pretty bland and neutral. A lot of people don't like the highly processed way that shortening is made, and they prefer something more natural for their pie crust like butter or lard. Lastly, here's our pie crust made with butter. Butter is 80% fat, the rest is milk solids and water. Butter can produce a supremely flaky pie crust, like you can see here. Butter can be a little bit more difficult to work into the flour than shortening or lard because you need to use cold butter. But the flavor, you can't beat the flavor of butter. And the milk solids in butter are going to help develop the color, and you'll get a crust that has a little bit more golden brown than in the other pie crust. Lard and shortening can give you more tenderness and flakiness in your pie crust. But the flavor is pretty boring and one-dimensional, and you don't get that rich, buttery flavor. For that reason, I prefer butter pie crust. In the end, no matter which type of fat you use in your pie crust, lard, shortening, or butter, as long as you distribute it evenly in the flour, you don't overmix it, and you use the right balance of fat, flour, and water, you're going to have a delicious, flaky, homemade pie crust.